Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to this important event. A few months ago, during my address to the Alaska legislature, I told the legislature that we would be launching a public awareness campaign to address the epidemic in terms of fentanyl that is harming more Alaskans, actually killing more Alaskans than ever. Today, on the eve of National Fentanyl Awareness Day, that is actually tomorrow, and in coordination with the governor, and by the way, almost his entire cabinet, which is incredibly powerful for our state, we are all together launching the One Pill Can Kill Fentanyl Awareness Campaign in coordination with other federal agencies, particularly the DEA, which has been leading this campaign across the country. Alaska is under attack. In 2023, opioids killed more Alaskans than ever before. Drug-related deaths, the vast majority of which were fentanyl-related, increased by 40% year over year from 2023 versus 2022. Alaska now leads the nation with the highest year-over-year drug-related overdose deaths increases. Across America, fentanyl is now the leading cause of death for young adults aged 18 to 45. Number one cause of death for Americans, according to Families Against Fentanyl. All Alaskans need to know a deadly dose of fentanyl can fit on the tip of a pencil. Just one pill can kill. Never trust your own eyes to determine if a pill is legitimate. The only safe medications are the ones prescribed by a trusted medical professional and dispensed with a licensed pharmacist. The DEA estimates that 7 out of every 10 pills that they seize contains a lethal dose of fentanyl. Think about that. Shocking, scary, which is why this campaign is needed. So during today's press conference and in the coming months, this campaign, which is going to try and bring in all Alaskans, not just government officials, will examine where fentanyl is coming from, where and how it is being sold, the dangers of the drug, how it impacts Alaska communities, and importantly, the resources available for treatment, prevention, and reporting criminal activity. That's why it's imperative that we all work together in the coming weeks and months. Combating this epidemic needs to be a multi-pronged strategy. International, federal, state, local. For example, at the international level, the Chinese Communist Party, led by the dictator Xi Jinping, agreed back during the Trump administration that they would end sending the precursors for fentanyl to Mexico. That didn't happen. President Biden last fall had another agreement with the Chinese Communist Party dictator Xi Jinping that they would stop sending precursors to Mexico for fentanyl, just as they had agreed during the Trump administration. That is not happening. So, in the Congress, we are acting to take action on this. I recently co-sponsored what was called the Fend Off Act, which passed the Congress and was signed into law 2 weeks ago. This will provide the Biden administration for much more sanctioning power against Chinese companies and Mexican drug cartels that are the big suppliers and producers of fentanyl that come into America. This issue impacts all of us in every community in Alaska. I want to commend our state and national media for the informative reporting that demonstrates this. We're hoping that you do more, but let me just give you a couple examples. The ADN just last month had a headline, quote, in 2023, it was the deadliest year for opioid overdoses. The state of Alaska saw the highest increase in the country. That was the ADN last month. The Juneau Empire last month had this headline, Tribal Assembly of Tlingit Haida declares crisis with fentanyl and other deadly drugs as its highest priority. And then Hopefully some of you saw this in the USA Today, in the Courier Journal of Kentucky last year in September, had this chilling expose, and the title was "Targeting the Last Frontier. Mexican Cartels Send Drugs into Alaska, Upping the Death Toll." This article begins with this chilling sentence, quote, "The infamous Sinaloa drug cartel, once headed by notorious kingpin El Chapo and others in Mexico, are targeting Alaska with drug pipelines driving up the overdose death toll in that state." That article goes on to say, drugs have spread to every corner of Alaska, even to villages of 50 people or less. As I mentioned, we need a multi-pronged strategy to combat this. The One Pill Can Kill campaign we are launching today is primarily about education and prevention. This is an all-hands-on-deck effort to save Alaskan lives, to try to reach Alaskans online, in person, and through traditional and other forms of media like TV and radio. As part of this effort, the governor and I and his team will be launching public service announcement videos, graphics to be distributed on local TV and radio and online. Every Alaskan can help spread the word. Later today, my office will be releasing a digital toolkit available online and a website that provides several ways communities and individual Alaskans can get involved. We've already lost way too many Alaskan lives, but there's no doubt that with all of us working together, we can reverse the shocking increase in overdoses in our state. So we're going to get started right now. I want to thank the governor again. You know, they got a lot going on in Juneau. Most of his cabinet is actually here for this launch. I want to thank Sandy and Karen, some of the mothers who have been struck by this tragedy. And this is a beginning of an important group effort that we hope all Alaskans can take part in. So with that, Governor Dunleavy, thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thanks, Senator. With this situation is really not going to be dealt with effectively unless we're all working together. So I want to thank the Senator and other government officials at the federal level for working on this. As he had mentioned, a lot of this starts in the international level. A lot of it starts in China. A lot of it starts at our border. And it is our border, even though it's thousands of miles south of us. It is an entry point here into the United States. We don't have a lot of legal activity coming across the border from Russia or Canada. We're fortunate from that perspective. But nonetheless, we do feel the fallout of what's happening at the southern border. And that's something that really needs to be worked on, to be honest with you. As mentioned, education, prevention, treatment are all an important role in solving this issue. You know, I just want people to think that, you know, when you look back in history on the different iterations of opiate abuse in the 70s, it was oftentimes viewed as an inner city issue. People that didn't matter on the margins of things. When you look at what's happened in the last several years, including prescription drugs, drug abuse, that oftentimes lead folks, after their prescription drugs have run out, to this type of activity involving fentanyl. And there's even countless cases of individuals unwittingly ingesting fentanyl, something they didn't do on purpose, resulting in their death, unfortunately. So fentanyl is such a potent drug, as the Senator mentioned, that it's something that we can't overlook. We got to take it seriously. Many of us have family members, unfortunately, or at least friends and acquaintances that we're aware of that have been touched by this scourge. This is not something that other people deal with. This is not about an other person or those folks. This is about us. And it is important for the state of Alaska. As mentioned, the statistics in some cases are going in the wrong direction. Ever since I got in office, we've equipped our Department of Public Safety and other departments with resources to battle this and other issues that Alaska has to deal with on the public safety side of things. You've all, the media's all published our interdiction efforts in interdicting hauls of this poison from the lower 48. We'll continue to work very hard at that level. We got to work hard at education. We got to work hard at treatment as well. We've introduced some bills, for example. One bill would make the death of anyone that dies from drugs a second-degree murder charge for the dealers. And that bill hopefully will get passed this year. And there's other elements of fentanyl legislation in the legislature right now. So long story short is this is not going to get better on its own. It needs us to intervene at multiple levels. And just appreciate the work that the Senator is doing and others at the federal level. A lot of work ahead of us. Can't take our foot off the gas pedal. And again, I want to thank the Senator. I want to thank our troopers. I want to thank our staff here today that deal with this issue. And I just want the people of Alaska to know that this is not just on our radar screen. It's tops, one of the top issues we're dealing with. And my thoughts, my prayers, my heart goes out to those that have been impacted directly. You're going to hear some folks speak today about that. But in the end, the only way we deal with this is we all lock arms together. We do a multi-pronged approach, and hopefully we can make not just a big dent, but turn the tide on this scourge here in Alaska. So next, I'd like to have the Attorney General come up and say a few remarks regarding the issue.
Thank you, Governor Dunleavy. Senator Sullivan, appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to focus my remarks on what the governor alluded to, which is HB 66, which will increase the penalties for dealing fentanyl in the state of Alaska. That bill was introduced last year. We're seeing some movement late in this session, and with your help, we can get that bill across the finish line so that we can impact the lives in a positive manner for Alaskans. House Bill 66 was heard in Senate Finance Friday. The bill makes crimes involving fentanyl more serious. In Alaska, fentanyl is involved in 3 out of every 4 overdose deaths. And the reason for this is that criminals often lace other drugs with fentanyl to increase profitability. Fentanyl is cheap and easy to produce, doesn't rely on growing crops, it's all chemical, and so therefore these bad actors lace drugs, other drugs such as opioids and heroin with fentanyl, and that's the reason why a lot of people that die of these overdoses aren't even aware they're taking fentanyl, as the governor said. House Bill 66 increases the penalty for dealers or other persons who provide the drug when an overdose death occurs from manslaughter to homicide. The known increased risk of death caused by fentanyl justifies charging them with a homicide. The bill also increases the penalty for delivering drugs to a person who is unaware that the drug is being delivered. This can happen when a person is mentally incapable, incapacitated, or is unaware, such as when a drug is secretly dropped into a victim's drink. Those who prey upon people who are vulnerable or unaware should be subject to increased penalties. The bill makes delivering drugs to a person who is mentally incapable, incapacitated, or unaware that they are being given the drug a charge of misconduct involving a controlled substance in the first degree. That's a long way of saying they're going to go to prison for a very long time. Finally, the bill also increases the prison time for manufacturing or delivering fentanyl and methamphetamine. HB 66, the aim of that bill is to put fentanyl dealers permanently out of business in the state of Alaska. With that, I'm going to turn over time to Captain Sims.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you, Senator, Governor. I'm Captain Sims with the statewide drug enforcement unit of Alaska State Troopers. I have 29 members in that unit, and we work with our federal, state, and local partners in an effort to dismantle and disrupt drug trafficking organizations. Alaska is also has the newest HIDA, or high-intensity drug trafficking areas. We have 3 initiatives, law enforcement initiatives in the HIDA that include Southeast Alaska, the interior, and South Central Alaska here. We're talking about fentanyl today. How does it get to Alaska? As has been stated, precursors come in through China, into Mexico and other countries in South America, and then across the open southern border and straight into Alaska. In 2023, we seized over 83 kilograms of fentanyl in Alaska. Ladies and gentlemen, that is potentially 41.5 million deaths, potentially overdose deaths when you look at it, number of people. And also in 2023, as a whole, the Alaska State Troopers seized 721 pounds of illicit drugs. That was up from 668 pounds the previous year. As I mentioned, we worked with our state, federal, and local, other state and local law enforcement agencies, to include, which many of you may recall, the DTO, or drug trafficking organization, that was taken down earlier this year with the FBI, DEA, Anchorage Police Department, and the United States Postal Service. And that we made 53 arrests. That had an impact from communities of Savunga all the way down to southeast Alaska. They also included 2 murders that were part of that drug trafficking organization. Why? A lot of it has to do with cost, the increase, the profit gain. A comparison, one can buy a M30 pill, a little blue pill, in the state of Arizona for $10, $15. You can turn around and sell that same pill here in the state of Alaska anywhere from from $10 up to $150, $200, $250. This is more than a law enforcement issue. It's going to take the help of all Alaskans. And we take this seriously as the Department of Public Safety. And we ask that Alaskans call in. Call the Alaska State Troopers, download our Alaska Tips line, make those tips. I will tell you that I personally read every drug tip that comes in because it's emailed, not only because it's emailed to me, because I have a concern for it. You see, I too have been affected by this. I too have lost friends and family because of this epidemic. So it hits home. Your tips help us tremendously, and we need them. This has impacted far too many Alaskans. I thank you for your time. I now turn the time over to Public Health Commissioner Heidi Hedberg.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heidi Hedberg, Commissioner for the Department of Health, and I do want to thank the Governor and the Senator for really elevating this epidemic that we are seeing strike Alaska, in addition to the United States. The stories that I hear on a weekly basis are devastating. I also just want to share my sincere condolences to the families who have lost a loved one, to the friend that's lost a friend, or to that employer that lost that amazing employee. As the Governor and the Senator said, together we need to engage in a multi-pronged approach, and it starts today with this initiative, One Pill Can Kill. Safety. Safety is really important, and I want to highlight for you that on the DEA website, www.dea.gov, is information about fentanyl. It's what they're seeing. In addition, on the Department of Health website, we also have a lot of information about opioids. We have a toolkit for employers on how to work with employees that they're suspected of having a substance use disorder. We want to make sure that they're employed and remain employed, or how to help them get into treatment. And so we have tools in order to help that employer. We also have a dashboard, and it is updated as information is provided to us. And so if you go to the Department of Health website, you can receive up-to-date information. What we are seeing is a rise in deaths. Last year, as the Senator mentioned, in 2023, we did see a significant rise in fentanyl deaths. This is the largest in Alaska's history, and it marks a really devastating moment in history. What we are focusing on is strengthening our partnerships with communities, with our stakeholders, with parents that you will soon hear who have had to experience that devastating loss of that child. They're passionate about making a change. And again, together, working together, we can make that change. Specifically diving in just a little bit more into the details of the statistics that we're seeing, preliminary data of 2023 tells us more than 350 Alaskans died from an overdose last year. That is over 40% compared to 2022, and that's sobering. Specifically for fentanyl, the state saw a 75% increase in fentanyl-related deaths. From 151 Alaskans lost in fentanyl in 2022 to 264 Alaskans lost in 2023. In 2023, approximately 3 of every 4 overdoses in Alaska was related to fentanyl. And while we are seeing a decrease in heroin-related deaths by 75% in the last 2 years, this substantial increase in the fentanyl-related deaths really highlights the increased availability of fentanyl in the drug market. So what are we doing? What are the prevention efforts? First and foremost, I really want to thank the Department of Public Safety for the interdiction. How do we stop the drugs coming into Alaska? Second, I really want to thank the Department of Law. They are really pursuing that litigation and focusing on settlements. And the settlement funding is coming to the Department of Health, and we're using to get that out to communities. So we really want to thank the partnerships with our 2 state agencies. We are using those funds, and in 2023, we distributed over 46,000 naloxone kits. Naloxone is a harm reduction. We also distributed 89,000 fentanyl test strips. That's significant. It's the most that we've ever distributed. The department is taking a 4-prong approach, focusing on prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. First, we want to prevent people from using drugs. Second, we want to increase access to treatment and to recovery. Third, we want to make sure that we are increasing access to harm reduction. We want to make sure that as an Alaskan who's struggling with substance use disorder, they can get into treatment quickly. When they are ready to say that they're ready, we want to make sure there's a bed available for them, a counselor to help them walk through this process. We want to make sure that there's access to harm reduction strategies to make sure that if there's a relapse, that they have another day to stand in and go into treatment. It is our intent this year to really focus on building out those partnerships and those strategies. So in addition, a couple of weeks ago, we announced that we released a request for proposal, RFP, for $3.3 million. That is going to be annual, $3.3 million. It's going to go out to 21 communities that are focusing on prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. We know that through partnering with our communities, partnering with organizations that are focusing on this multi-pronged approach, we can make a difference together. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Sandy now.
Hi, my name is Sandy Snodgrass. I'm the director of AK Fentanyl Response Project, and I'd like to thank Senator Sullivan, Governor Dunleavy, for coming together to continue to stand up a response to the scourge of fentanyl poisoning deaths in Alaska. We need to use every tool we can get to fight fentanyl. The One Pill Can Kill campaign that we've introduced here today will reduce demand through awareness, education, with the goal that Alaskans will never take an unprescribed pill or use any illicit drug. My son Bruce did not get this awareness when he was unknowingly given a fatal dose of fentanyl, October 26, 2021. He was only 22 years old and my only child. He died within shouting distance of help in a wooded area a short distance from a Wells Fargo drive-through and McDonald's drive-through on DeBar Road in Anchorage. The devastation of his fentanyl poisoning death has impacted his family, friends, and community in ways that I cannot fully describe here today. However, the impact of his death has also influenced positive change. Governor Dunleavy, I'd like to thank you for your bill that will increase penalties to second-degree murder when a fentanyl poisoning death occurs in Alaska. Senator Sullivan, I'd like to thank you for co-sponsoring Bruce's Law. Bruce's Law will reduce demand through awareness and education, not only here in Alaska, but around the country. Both of these laws, along with the One Pill Can Kill campaign introduced here today, will add 3 powerful tools to the toolbox to bring the fight to fentanyl. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Malcolm Smith, and I'm the president and founder of the self-funded David Dillon Foundation. It was inspired by the death of my son in 2017 to a drug poisoning. And this is his birthday week, so it's been a really rough week for me. He would have been 32. Each year, the David Dillon Foundation presents a mobile cross memorial at the Park Strip with over 1,000 crosses that we built. And we invite the public to come down and to sign a cross for their loved one and to honor them in their humanness. And we try to create a space for them, a stigma-free zone, so that they can tell their story in safety. They're shattered. And Senator Sullivan, I want to thank you. You've never missed a year, and for spending so much time with the attendees. Means a lot to everyone. With the exception of last year, due to the high winds and broken tents, we've had mounting participation. And in 2022, we had so many people come, we could not facilitate the lineup of people. We just were not prepared, and it was fentanyl. People come grieving their children, their family members that were ball players, a teacher, a real estate agent, an attorney, and college students that, that took some Adderall that they got from the Black Web or something, or from a friend, to stay up late at night to study and passed away. Children as young as 15 years old, and a lot of these young people have been addicted for many, many years and have pretty much lost their childhood. It's very, very sad. I mean, these children were our future. Think about that. The effect on community is a silent killer in itself. Crime ravages communities, and for a parent, it's the most devastating form of PTSD known to man. For people like Sandy and I, we will never experience a college graduation, plan for a wedding, have grandchildren. And I run into so many people that have multiple children that sink so deeply into depression that they abandon the other offspring. And there's mental health issues that arise from that. It's beyond what we actually think about. Families become uprooted. There's divorce due to anger and to blame and misplaced anger. People turn to drugs and alcohol. And there's problems in the workplace. There's health issues because of ongoing anxiety and stress. And unfortunately, we also see suicides. But unlike 7 years ago when my son was alive, we have resources today. And Heidi had just mentioned Dashboard. There's the Department of Behavioral Health has a substance use disorder residential treatment bed count, and it is divided up by region, and they update it weekly and sometimes daily. So if you have a person in your family or a friend that's struggling, you can go on that website and see what is available for treatment. The David Dillon, on our website, we keep a comprehensive annual update of many resources for South Central, including peer support, harm reduction, reentry, grief and family support, treatment centers, and online for rural Alaska. Today we actually have a walk-in clinic, and everyone needs to know this. We have a walk-in clinic in Wasilla, True North Recovery, with the Day One Center in Dillon's Place. People can walk in that day, get an assessment, and they will help you navigate Medicaid, your insurance, getting an ID. The window is short when people are ready for help, and it's just such an important piece of what we're doing now. We now have mobile crisis in the municipality, True North in Wasilla and Fairbanks, and Set Free, which is another residential treatment center, now has a crisis residential stabilization, a long-awaited component to fill in that bed-to-bed gap so that people are not left going home after detox. They have a place to stay. We have Banyan for military and with trauma and alcohol abuse and VOA. I am really, really proud of this administration for working on all the right strategies, like Sandy said, and for embracing conversations that gear towards youth drug education and intersect with mental health. And I'm really, really encouraging families come together and open this discussion in your homes, in your neighborhoods. It's everywhere. I cannot go anywhere. If I open up the conversation, I can guarantee you somebody knows somebody or it happened in their family. It's so widespread, and I'll bet that is probably the same for the majority of people here in the room. So open up those conversations, you know, that transparency of sharing our own struggles gives people the green light to talk about theirs. They can talk about their struggles. We can talk about fentanyl. And our goal is to reduce the demand, this is one way that we can help. Between the drivers of stigma, of trauma, sports injuries, disconnect from community and social media, and the strategic poisoning of the United States of America, why should we feel shame for something that could have happened to any of us? Thank you.
All right, we're going to take questions. If the speakers want to stay behind the podium so that you can easily access the podium microphones. We're going to go through the outlets that RSVP'd, and then we'll take questions from those who are joining virtually. So first, we have Wesley from Alaska Public Media. You have a question?
I guess my question is for the governor. I'm curious if the state's outreach has changed in recent years to sort of be better at, reaching Alaskans. I'm thinking of the Choose Respect campaign from 2010, which I don't think has had a sizable impact on the number of sexual assaults in the state. So I'm wondering if the state has updated its strategy for how to outreach people so that it can be more successful.
So again, this is a multi-pronged approach. This is a new. I don't want to say drug, but the intensity of this drug is different. And again, it's important to understand the history of opiates, not just in this state, but the country. It was just a few years ago we were dealing with the prescription epidemic of folks going and being prescribed. So we had a campaign, both illegal and informational, on that as well. This has really taken off just the last couple of years. And some would say that the border is a huge issue involving this. But we're going to be able to answer your question, we're going to check our protocols to see what additional things we need to do with outreach. The social media platforms have evolved immensely in the last couple of years as well. So we'll be having that conversation as well. We've been focused probably the last year or two on interdiction, resources for our troopers. But nonetheless, it is an issue that we need to take a look at and see what we need to revamp going forward.
All right, and next we have LaShawn with Fox 5, your Alaska Link.
Thank you. With this four-pronged process, I guess this is for whoever was the answer. It's open discussion. For whoever this four-pronged process, let's say if I'm a person who is in need of help, how does that four-pronged process work?
Hi, this is Heidi. Thanks for the question. So the question is, if there's an individual that is struggling with a substance use disorder, how does prevention, how does harm reduction, how does treatment and recovery work? First and foremost, there's communities across the state that are standing up task forces. I think the most widely recognized is the Matsu Task Force. They came together, they recognized there was a problem, and they are working with organizations in their community to educate their residents, their schools, about what is fentanyl, how to recognize it. The message is, do not take drugs unless it is prescribed to you from your doctor. And so that's a communication tool and a purpose behind the prevention. It's about education. The second is making sure, just like Karen had mentioned, that there is access to treatment. When someone makes the decision, today's the day that I'm ready to start, there needs to be a clinician on the other side. There needs to be a bed on the other side waiting for them to say, yes, let's help you transition, because it can be rough. And so that's part of increasing access to treatment, making sure that all clinicians are aware of the available beds if they need to have detox or inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment. And we want to make sure that that is well publicized, and it is, there's a listing on the Department of Health website. The third is around harm reduction. So as you heard, there are multiple scenarios that come to be, whether there's a teenager that goes to a party and there's drugs at the party, making sure that A, they know they have an exit strategy and they know how to say no. Two, there's a harm reduction, that there's naloxone, that everyone is trained and knows how to administer naloxone, calls 911, and knows how to provide support to that individual. I would say the third is individuals that have entered treatment. Once they leave that inpatient setting, they go to outpatient, they enter a recovery group. It's a group of peers that have lived experience, and they know what it's like to leave that very caring setting and go back into their community. They need to have a lot of support and structure in place so they can remain sober and continue to give back to their community. So that's the 4 prongs. Communities are really standing up task forces to implement those 4 strategies. The Department of Health is working with those organizations to amplify that work. That's part of the national opioid settlement and that RFP that was released, the $3.3 million. There's a lot of organizations that need funding, and the funding is there to support these communities as they stand into this place.
And I would just add to the strategy, that's the commissioner's done a great job of articulating the state's focus, the Dunleavy administration focus, which has been very commendable. But as I mentioned at the outset, this goes broader than that, right? This is the southern border, which unfortunately is wide open. This is countries like China, which have not kept their commitments. This is law enforcement, which our incredible troopers are focused on, as Captain Sims mentioned. So there's a whole host of other elements to this that, are at the international level, federal level. The One Pill Can Kill campaign, though, is really about educating and prevention. And I think that statistic from the DEA, 7 out of 10 pills that they've seized have fentanyl, lethal doses of fentanyl. I mean, think about that. That is just a shocking thing. And we need to make sure that all Alaskans realize that, and especially in every community.
Great. Now, you're with Rosen with Alaska Beacon.
Yeah, I guess for Edward, what's the explanation for why Alaska's had this increase, the highest increase of among all states?
So the question is, what is the reason for the increase in fentanyl overdoses? And I would go back, I think, to Captain Sims, who mentioned fentanyl is cut into a lot of street drugs, and There's an increase in that drug trafficking that's come up, and so those pills are more expensive. You have higher revenue that you can earn if you are selling drugs. And so part of that is, that's the reason for the increased overdoses. That's why there's a strong strategy for the interdiction. How do we prevent the drugs from coming into the state in the first place?
But why Alaska versus other states?
All states are seeing an increase in fentanyl overdoses.
Yeah, let me just say something there too. You know, somebody will think this is political, but you had a change in administration in 2020, and then the borders opened up. You'll see, it may not be to this extent in other states, but you're going to see an incline across the country on that issue. And there is a culture to some degree of permissiveness with regard to this issue, not just in protecting the borders, but what comes across. And you know, we have a bill, as we mentioned, and we have a multi-pronged approach, but we have a bill, as we mentioned, that is going to tag on a second-degree murder charge for anyone that is involved in the overdose death of an Alaskan. Some people may think that's harsh, but if you applied that to any other aspect of society, somebody cuts the brakes on a car and somebody gets killed, somebody doesn't maintain an airplane, somebody plays with a gun, they all have consequences. The issue with selling drugs of this magnitude and this intensity, this particular drug, is those folks that are selling the drugs already have baked into their system that there'll be people that will die. Not that they hope that they don't, but they already know that because of the intensity of this drug, people will die, and they don't care. And so this has to be a multi-pronged approach, but for those that think, you know, we may be going a little too harsh in Alaska, some say we're not going harsh enough. If your activity has baked into it the death of innocent Alaskans, you need to be prepared to pay the consequences. And so I'd ask our legislature, we have about 9 days left in the legislature roughly, to move this fentanyl bill, get this passed, to send a message to those dealers, but also send a message to Alaskans that we're not going to tolerate it.
All right, John Thompson from KTU.
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Michelle from Anchorage Daily News.
Yeah, I'd like to ask about various opioid settlement monies and how those are being used, and if you know, I know there's sort of a windfall there. Is that going to be used to fund any of these efforts?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So Alaska, over 18 years, is going to receive $58 million. The RFP that was released a couple of weeks ago, that $3.3 million that I mentioned, that's from the national settlement.
So I don't think we have any questions coming in virtually, but if we do virtually, or any other additional questions before we conclude?
I have one more. Is there like a K through 12 elementary or education component to the One Pill Can Kill campaign? Are we going to talk about this in schools?
Yeah.
Young people?
So I think that's a really important component of this. The answer is yes. And this is the beginning, this is the launch, but I think our goal is to, as we are getting out to different communities, we're going to continue to raise it. But here's also a really important element of this. We have these courageous moms, and I want to thank them again. But the other thing that we're going to try and enlist in this is young people themselves, right? If it's a bunch of government officials, no offense to all of us, you know, making these pronouncements, that's a start. But having young people as ambassadors, because they have witnessed a lot of this, and let's face it, every Alaskan has witnessed and been impacted by this. So the goal here is to bring everybody in. And I do think it's a really important point, having young Alaskans as ambassadors in this endeavor might be the most important element of all.
Any other questions? All right, so at this time we're going to do a quick photo opportunity.
I just want to thank everybody again, the governor and his team, the great turnout from the media. I mean, this is, as I mentioned, there's been some really great reporting already on this, but the more we can all collectively get the word out, it's going to be really important, and we're going to all continue to work together. So I want to thank the governor and his cabinet, which most of them are actually here, and Sandy, Karen, our troopers, and everybody else. So thanks again.